And the title is The Power of Disbeliever. So we welcome Brother Livre for his exhortation.
Good morning to all the brothers and sisters here.
Good morning.
Yeah. So yesterday I went ice skating for the first time. That was a little activity that the COC had. It was for the first time. It was quite a bunch of us there, and it's my first time. And I'm glad to mention that according to Adam, he agreed that I was the most improved there. So I'll take that. Take that, yeah. But I'm still in disbelief. Yeah. But so, dear brothers and sisters, have you ever found yourself in a situation where? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where something is happening to you, but you're not quite sure whether or not it's actually happening, whether or not it's real? Yeah, I see some head nodding. Yeah, but I'll tell you what. Let's rewind, and I'm gonna share a picture with you guys. Right? I don't know how clearly you guys can see that. I'm sure the view is much better for the people watching from online. But that's a picture up there. Let's see. I'll get closer. Can you guys? I was gonna. Okay. Yeah. So this is a picture of us, living in the camp at the time. So I don't know how well you guys can see this, but that's Bast. This guy right here is Ode. It's in the crowd, by the way. Jesus. Yeah. So that's Sabina up here. Here's Bast, carrying a stick. I don't know if it's supposed to be Moses, pretending to be Moses at the time. Ode, wow, look at those shoes. Gonna be all stylish now. Yeah. But between the two, with regard to who's more stylish, you get to decide. But this is a picture of us, living in a refugee camp at the time. And so in the background, I don't know if you noticed, but there's literally camps. That's us living in a refugee camp. Yeah. Now this will have been about, I wanna say, 12 to 13 years ago. Yeah. It's all been about 12 to 13 years ago from today. Yeah. And right after living in that refugee camp, we moved in quite a few places at the time. And throughout the time, if you had asked either of us at the time that one day we'll be coming to the United States, that was beyond belief. Like, I mean, for me at the time, it's like, no way that's happening. I mean, America in itself was a big deal. Much so, like just boarding an airplane. Living in a camp like this, it's the closest I'd ever been to seeing an airplane was seeing an airplane in the sky, and it's like you could see it up in the sky. It's really this tiny thing. In my head, I'm wondering, man, how are we gonna be able to fit in that? Yeah, but it was just beyond belief at the time that one day would actually board a plane and move somewhere. Yeah, but fast forward, I'll say many a couple more years later, we got a letter from the United Nations saying that the embassy of the United States had accepted us. And just my parents, getting the letter themselves, like they couldn't believe it. It's like, is this really happening? And they said that we're ready. We're gonna come to the United States. And the day of the flight, so we didn't have any transportation getting there. And so brother Leona and Uncle Lucas, came to our place. They helped us with all the transportation. We got in the minivans that they had at the time. They drove us to the airport. And we drove to the airport, and I'm still not believing that this is actually happening. We drive to the airport. Here we are in the car. We get up at the airport, and I look out the window, and I see these, giant airplanes moving by. For the first time, I was actually able to see the airplanes close by, and I was like, dude, these giants. I was like, oh man, how do these things even work? And we got to the airport. We had to do quite a few checkups here and there. We got in, and it dawned on me that this was actually happening. Like we were gonna board an airplane and actually be able to fly. We're at the airport, got through the compartment. In the movies, usually see the airplane landing and then the lower the stairs and then people get in. And when we're going through the compartment, I'm like, where's this thing leading to? Isn't this supposed to be like the movies where the stairs just automatically lands down from the airplane and then people just climb in? So here we are in the compartment. We walk in. I got to my seat. I was seated by the window actually, and Isaiah was close to me. We were facing two more other guys. So look at the window. I'm like, man, this is real. This is actually happening. Like we're actually in the airplane. And we're actually gonna be flying. So we got in. Yeah, we got in, and on a few occasions, I had to ask Isaiah, Isaiah, is this happening? Is this real? I look out the window, it's like this, huge airplanes going back and forth. Yeah. Finally, the airplane left. The airplane, the pilot did his thing, and we left and we were able to fly. We flew we first went to New York. Yeah, and so we got to New York. We got there, and it's like, is this really happening? I see out the window, it's like, man, I see signs everywhere, like, welcome to America. I'm like, is this really happening? And so from New York, we got another plane from New York to Texas. So we flew to Texas. So we got to Texas. We were there. It was during nighttime, and I could see, outside of the airport, there were like a bunch of cars passing by. In my head, I'm thinking, man, I've never seen this many cars before. It's like it's at night, so it's like a bunch of lights everywhere. Like, is this really? Is this real? Is this like in my head? That's what's all going on in my head. Yeah, I sure hope it's not a dream. It's gonna be a big disappointment. And yeah, sure enough, our case manager, came to pick us up at the airport. Took us to the apartment that we're living at the time. And sure enough, it was real. And I sure hope it's still real because I'm up here talking to you guys right now in the States. Sure enough, it was real. Now I look back and if it hadn't been because of my parents' belief, despite of all the hardships that we went through, if it wasn't because of their belief that this, despite the hardships as well as struggles that we went through, that there was something out here, then we wouldn't been here. And so it sure seems to me that one of the most powerful force that a human being possesses is the power of belief. Yeah. Now, belief as a verb is defined as to have confidence in the truth. As a noun, is the acceptance of something as true. Brother, you can stop sharing the picture now. And we're done with that. Yeah. Now, this belief, this is another word for not, is the opposite of belief. But disbelief essentially has the same force as belief, except it's in the opposite direction. Like I mentioned earlier, if my parents, didn't believe that we could one day, enter an airplane and be able to board to come to the United States, I'm sure that would have been the case if they had disbelief. The Hebrew word for believe is this word emuna. Emuna, it's actually where we get the word amen from. And it can also mean, faith, conviction, as well as trust. The Greek word for believe is this word pistis. And it can also mean conviction, trust, faith, as well as confidence as well. Now, in the passage the passage that we read this morning, I'll get onto those two ideas, later on throughout the talk. But the reading this morning from the book of Mark, prior to this experience, Jesus had been teaching in different towns, different cities. And then finally decided to go preach to his hometown, which in this particular instance, the usual case is Nazareth. And we know that he had been doing miracles. The account of Mark indicates that the wind obeyed him. He also healed a girl as well as the woman. He was also teaching as well. Like verse 2 tells us, teaching in a synagogue. And while teaching in his hometown, the people from his own city actually wondered about his teaching abilities as well as miracles. Now, despite what they heard and saw as well, they chose not to believe. They still chose not to believe, and we get more clear on that based on what Christ said. Verse 4 reads in Mark 6 verse 4. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, among his own relatives and in his own house. Now, that's a maxim. That's what's called a maxim. Essentially a saying that has a general truth to it. And basically what Jesus is getting at here is that just because he grew up with them, he grew up with them in the same city. Was of the same same city as them. They were probably thinking, what authority does he think he has? It'd be a common way of us putting it in this way, like who does he think he is? He grew up here with us. Who does he think he is that all of a sudden he can start teaching us all of these things? And the account tells us that they were offended about his teachings. The account of Luke actually tells us that they almost threw him off a cliff. They had wrath, to the point where they almost threw him off the cliff. This is how the account of Luke reads. Luke 4, starting at verse 28. So all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath, and rose up and thrust him out of the city. And they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. Then passing through the midst of them, he went his way. And therefore, Jesus couldn't do mighty works there, other than a few. And Christ marveled at their belief. That's what the account tells us. And they are disbelief, that's powerful. Yeah. Despite what they saw, they still choose not to believe. Yeah. I wonder what type of people these were. And for them, there was no turning around from that. Now, in the Old Testament, we also read of the account of the children of Israel, in the wilderness account. The full story goes, they were, in Egypt, living slavery, for quite a long time. And so then, and God decided that he was going to rescue them. He was going to, take them to the promised land. Yeah. And, from Egypt, going into the wilderness, I was actually, looking this up. And moving from Egypt to Sinai, so by car, depending on the source, typically takes anywhere from 5 to 7 hours. Now, by walking, it will take about 40 days, just through walking. Yeah, but it took them 40 years. Now, the account of the children of Israel, despite all the miracles, that they saw well in Egypt and throughout the wilderness, they still chose, not to believe that God was actually with them, that God was actually going to save them. And so finally, we have an account of what God finally decides to do. And so if you come with me to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 1. Deuteronomy chapter 1, 34 to 39. It's an account of what God finally decides to do with the unbelieving generation. And the Lord heard the sound of your words, and was angry, and took an oath, saying, surely not one of these men of this generation shall see that good land of which I sought to give to your fathers. Except to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he shall see it. And to him and his children I'm giving the land on which he walked, because he wholly followed the Lord. The Lord was also angry with me for your sakes, saying, even you shall not go in there. Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Moreover, the little ones and the children, who you will say will be victims, who today have no knowledge of good and evil, they shall go in them, and then I'll give them to it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, verse 40, but as for you, turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the ways of the Red Sea. So that's it's one of the biggest examples that we get from the Old Testament, of people that chose to believe, and as a result of that, God chose not to, have the older generation enter into the promised land. So if we go to the New Testament, if you come with me to the book of Hebrews, the faith chapter, as it's well known, we read of the account of people that believed unto the promises, despite even not having seen what it is that they were gonna be receiving. Yeah, Hebrews 11. I'm just gonna skim through a few verses. Starts off by defining what faith is. Hebrews 11, starting at verse 1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. I'm going to go ahead and jump onto verse 8, all the way till verse 8 to verse 12. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand of which is by the seashore. Throughout the chapter, we read of the account of many others, patriarchs, that show their unwavering faith. We read of we read of the account of a few others, like Moses, Jacob, Esau, and the majority of them later on throughout the chapter. Now, for these individuals that we read through in Hebrews 11, despite despite not having seen the promised land, they still chose to believe. Belief is an action word, which in my parents' case, they constantly had to check, still had to check with the United Nations, and frequently maintaining a prayerful life as well. Like I mentioned earlier, the concept of belief in Hebrew is this word emunah, and it can also mean faithfulness. The notion behind the usage of the word is faith completed by good works, like James 2 verse 17 tells us. And the implication being that what we do with what we believe is more important than what we actually know. Found a quote by Martin Luther King, and here's the quote by Martin Luther King: "Faith is taking the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase." Now, it's not enough to believe. It's not enough to just believe in the stairs, and settle for knowing that the stairs are there. We have to climb it. We have to climb it. Now, for us, believe in Jesus and His miracles, even for us, should be the first step in our faith. But we also have to, still climb the stairs, and discover what's more there is for us. Now, I know that's vaguely stated, but for each and every one of us, that could mean, it could mean different. It could mean different for each and every one of us. For some of us, like me right now, could mean, doing a personal Bible study. For others, it could mean, doing their daily Bible readings. Yeah. I'm speaking up here. I actually invited a friend. He hasn't been in church in a while. For you, buddy, if you're watching this at all, could mean, start attending church again. Yeah. And for some, it could mean, maybe attending more Bible studies. Yeah. It means different things for each and every one of us, because we all, at different stages, throughout our faith. Belief and disbelief can be easily intertwined. They both can easily be rooted in our lives. Both have the same force. Similar to the story that I shared earlier, about, my family, my parents. We all at different faith, we all at different stages in our faith. Some of us maybe are in the plane right now. Others are maybe in the refugee camp. Maybe with the account of the wilderness story with the children of Egypt, maybe that's where we're still at in our faith. But we need to continually be rooted in our belief in Christ, and one day He will set up His kingdom, and hopefully that's where we'll all be. I'd like to conclude by reading from the book of Hebrews 11 again. Hebrews 11, 39, the last two verses. Hebrews 11, verse 39 to 40. And all this, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. I'd also like to read another account from the same book of Hebrews again. Hebrews 11 again, verse 13 to 16. This all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them.